energetic woman, they got the game. Customer success is their claim to fame. On the podcast, they light the spark, elevating your skills, creating a mark. Let's dive deeper into the playbook.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Customer Success Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Roman Trebon, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the one and only Kevin Metzger. Before we dive in, a quick reminder to rate, subscribe, and share the show if you enjoy what you hear. It really helps us reach more listeners, which we really appreciate. Kevin, emotional intelligence is the topic today. Right. We haven't touched on this, I think, on the show yet. We've had a lot of episodes on a lot of different topics. I don't think we've touched on emotional intelligence. Kev, for you, let me start with you. Why do you think this is such a critical skill in customer success?
Yeah, thanks, Roman. I appreciate the question. I think emotional intelligence is one of those skills. We call it a soft skill, but it's one of the most impactful skills we have, especially in customer success. We're always in front of customers, having conversations, dealing with difficult situations a lot of the time. Sometimes we're dealing with negotiations. There's legal questions that come up, and all of these require a high level of emotional intelligence to deal with properly. You can really run something off the rails pretty quickly if you're not spending time understanding, listening with empathy, and knowing the skills of emotional intelligence for how to handle and respond to a situation, and recognizing when somebody's getting frustrated. Those are all skills that are really critical to maintaining relationships.
Essential, right? You hear IQ a lot. I don't hear EQ nearly as often, and it's super important. So Kev, we're excited to have another Kevin on the show, Kevin McCahill, with us today. Kevin is the founder of MasteryCX, and he's a seasoned customer success professional with a track record of leading global teams and driving transformation across the organization. Kevin has over 20 years of experience in customer success and leadership. He's passionate about the role of emotional intelligence in creating exceptional customer experiences and outcomes. He's helped organizations align team dynamics with customer needs, fostering stronger relationships, which you touched on, and higher satisfaction rates. So today he's going to join the show, share his insights on how emotional intelligence can shape customer success. We'll discuss why understanding and managing emotions, both your own and others, is a key driver for exceptional customer outcomes, and how organizations can harness emotional intelligence to foster stronger client relationships. He'll also touch on practical strategies for building emotionally intelligent teams, right? How to do that within your own team and organization, the challenges leaders face in implementing these approaches, and how do you measure all of this, right, Kev? I know you and I talk about measuring stuff all the time. So first off, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Roman, fellow Kevin, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, awesome.
Great to have you here.
Great to have you here. Let's start emotional intelligence, as Kevin M, Kevin Metzger said, gets talked about as a soft skill, right? But maybe to start, and for our audience, can you define emotional intelligence, kind of what it is, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Emotional intelligence is essentially understanding your emotions, understanding the emotions of others, and then how to respond and interact from that. We are all affected by the things that are happening around us, interactions with our customers, and so we have an emotional response. They do too. So how are we adjusting to that and generally trying to be affected in the positive?
Makes complete sense. Let's start here. I appreciate the background, the definition. Why is this so important in driving success for customers?
Naturally, as customer success, we are focused on clients and customers. We spend a lot of time with them. So how important it is to understand them. And so much of what we do, we recognize as CSMs or from wherever we are in the customer success team, we're being driven by a lot of different motivators. Maybe it's a revenue focus. Maybe it's a need for retention. For us, we're on that front line of that relationship. It's really important to understand the needs of those customers, what they're feeling, so we can respond in a positive way. So much of that, especially with larger companies, it's very easy for a customer to feel like they are just on a conveyor belt. They're just a number being passed down the line. So this is an opportunity to sort of humanize that process, to make that customer feel like, yeah, I get you. I hear what you're saying. And so emotional intelligence is things like active listening, things like empathetic listening, so that the customer feels heard, feels understood, that we get their emotions. We know what they're going through. We want to help. Now you're building rapport, strengthening that relationship, and the decisions can be made based on that better, deeper understanding.
So when you talk about active listening or emotional listening, a lot of times when they teach the class on active listening, it's repeat back the last thing somebody said.
Yeah.
I think that's important to some degree, making sure that you've heard it right. But would you classify it that way? Just repeating back the last thing somebody said isn't necessarily active listening, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. And that's very a foundational idea. And you're right. That's the first thing anyone would say about it. I think we go a little bit further beyond that. So it's listening to understand is active listening. So if you think about it this way, if you're on a call with a customer and you're in the renewal cycle and you're trying to get that renewal and they're talking about how this product is broken and the frustration they had, if we're listening to them be frustrated, all we're thinking is, what am I going to say next to get them back on track to sign the renewal? Okay. Well, a customer is going to recognize that this has just now become a sales call. So that's where this idea of, well, repeat back, but it's a little bit further beyond that. It's, another technique you could use that is naming emotions. You sound frustrated by what you're saying. This sounds like an annoyance to you. You sound like you're really enjoying this part of the product. What you're trying to do is actually sort of match the level, is what you're trying to find where they are and be at that same place. So I understand that this part of our tool isn't working for you. Do I have that? Right. So you realize their 5-minute speech they just gave you, that you actually heard some of that. But then it's also trying to understand where they are to where we can meet them, so that now, okay, we found a common ground. We get each other. We're here. Now as a team in that relationship rapport side, then how are we going to move forward from this? So that's sort of a way to take that I heard you and expand beyond it.
So Kevin, I think we could all say this is really important, right? Emotional intelligence, active listening, connecting with your clients, managing your emotions, right, is super important in how you speak to clients. I'm curious, I'm sure some of our listeners would say, if I go to my boss and say, I'm going to train my team on EQ, it's going to be a tough sell, right? It's a tough sell, right? It's one of those things, we know it's important, yet you may get pushback within an organization. So how do you make the case for EQ within an organization? How do you start measuring? How would you measure it? How do you get this into an organization? How do you start doing it with your team?
Yeah, great questions. This is, things that I work with customers on, companies on, and exactly that. So first of all, it's being self-aware, which I think we recognize that many of us think we're self-aware, but then in actual practicality, very few of us recognize it. But there's a level of self-aware which ties to controlling our emotions, which prevents regret. If we don't understand our own emotions, then in a business sense, we may say or do something that is going to harm ourselves professionally, but from a business standpoint, it's going to harm the business. So there is a place for it. And often it's tied into coaching and training. And I think so many businesses recognize that continuous training and coaching of teams, but also people leaders and senior leaders, is really valuable. There's a lot of skills to continue to be learned to then build a stronger team, and that adds to company retention and things like that. So generally, you focus on that area of really two parts. One, that sort of self-awareness of your team. How are they understanding customers? And with that point, how do you measure it? How are you ensuring that this is actually working, to your question? Well, you often see that in terms of retention and things like NPS scores, for instance. I can think of examples that I've worked on where companies, their post-sale process was lacking. They maybe just this very top-end customer had a dedicated person to them. We recognize the very top line does the vast majority of your revenues, but then there was this bottom, maybe 70% of the customer base that was sort of on their own to just use the chatbot and talk and try to get their question resolved that way. Well, so they were seeing that there was this lack of renewals, and they were dealing with an attrition issue. So what do? You expand that a little bit, training the team, the wider team, about how to talk to these smaller customers, how to better engage with them, They found NPS scores rose and the renewals cycle improved as well. Just being aware of the customers, the needs they might have, and how to communicate that across. Once you start to see that revenue increase or that retention, keeping those customers, the churn reduce, that's a very easy sell for the C-suite. Recognize that the sort of training, the sort of emotional side of it is really valuable when your team knows how to talk to customers across value points.
Do you have any examples of specific, like, okay, we had a team, we were this was what our retention numbers, this was what our NPS was, and, by going through training, we saw these kinds of improvements over time. I'm assuming you've been through this with several teams, so maybe there's some actual results that you can talk to.
I can give you one example. I worked with specifically about how we had all these customers that we considered uncared for, and the NPS score was very low. The response we were getting from customers was very low. So we enacted a sort of an adjustment to that, where we used some in-app messaging to customers, education to customers, did more segmenting with their needs. So better understanding at what stage of the process they're in. Maybe they just recently onboarded, right? So what are their needs there? It's closer to the renewal time. What are their needs there? And then do more outreach to them. A lot of this relates to customer journey mapping. Where are they in the process? What emotions might they be feeling? And then how can we match those emotions? So if you think about a journey map, if they just bought the product, they just onboard, there might be a level of anxiety, anxiousness there, right? I just paid for all this. Is this going to work for my team? This is a big investment. How are we going to match that emotion? We know they're feeling it. How can we support that? Education being one way to do that. Making sure they have all the tools they need, that regular outreach. One thing I like to talk with people about measuring is TTV, time to value. That point of value is different for every single customer. There's not a hard number. But when you understand their definition of value to your product, then it's the speed that you can match to it. Often that happens quickly, often within the first 2 weeks. Sometimes even the first day or two, they're going to recognize if this tool adds value to my product or not. So once you know that in that journey map, then you can match to it and say, okay, this is a point where they might have a lot of feelings, anxiety, or maybe they're unsure about it. What are we doing? And often that's putting education in front of them. It's putting us in front of them, saying, hey, how did that go? What can we help you with? In the example I'm referring to, we started our NPS score when I started working with that team was in the negatives, averaging now about 40. So it was a huge, huge increase. And so much of that is what I call humanizing the process. There are people on the other side. We still use the technology. We still are data driven, but there are still people that you can connect with and can listen. And then with those active listening skills, like we talked about, customers feel heard, they feel better understood, and that adds to that value that they're finding.
Yeah. So Kevin, if one of our listeners is managing a team and they want to take this on themselves with their team, what are some of the biggest challenges they may run into and how can they overcome them? I think one, and this is just more of an observation, is they're not trained themselves, right? Having these conversations is probably somewhat difficult, but curious from your perspective, how would someone go about this? What can they expect to face and how can they overcome it?
Yeah. So, first time is starting as part of training. We all have weekly, either one-on-ones or team meetings. Start incorporating that. There are plenty of good tools online. I would also highlight MasteryCX is exactly what we do, and we help your business to do this, creating training materials, coaching. But a lot of that to help start promoting that idea of self-awareness. So if we're in a tough conversation, and some of this is role-playing, to better understand where our starting point is sort of our benchmark. Customers frustrated, upset. What do you do? Well, I can feel my blood pressure rising. I want to say something. They don't get it. They're not listening. Okay. So if that's our typical response, what are some options? How can we work through that to better regulate ourselves and be aware of it? That training is a starting point for teams to work on or for one-on-one opportunities, creating an environment around that as well. For your team to feel comfortable to say, hey, I went on this call and really focused on naming the emotions. I focused on being a good listener. I focused on being empathetic when they were talking about their financial trouble and why they're having trouble deciding on the renewal. This is how it went. So you're sharing back what you learned to your teammates or to others on the team so they can see that others are working on this group mentality, creating an environment where people think about these emotions that we call soft skills, and therefore they're often minimized. But recognizing that these skills play a really important part. As a leader, we have to lead by example. So if you're a team leader, taking on coaching yourself is key. When you're talking with your team members and they're missing deadlines or interacting cross-functionally with the marketing team or the product team and it's not working, that's opportunities to try it too. We often think about this either outward or down. So we're either talking out to a customer or talking down to our team, but we recognize that all this works upward and cross too. So, we know from the CS side, we're constantly can be at odds with maybe the product team on their roadmap or what function the customers continually tell us they want and how far it is back on the roadmap. Well, that's tension there. That could be an issue. Are we being emotionally intelligent when we're talking with the product lead about what we're hearing from customers? Are we recognizing now when the C-suite is speaking or the CEO, if we have that relationship, how are we managing their emotions and the touch points that are there for them too? So when we start applying this in small ways across teams internally with customers, sharing what we're learning, then we start to build that sort of culture, that idea of emotional intelligence everywhere.
Yeah. Roman, as I'm listening to Kevin talk, to me, this is actually a lot about done right. This is what radical candor is about. That conversation we had with, that was Julie, right?
Julie Scott. And Kevin, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically the scale is care a lot. It's like a vertical scale, and then X is transparency. And the book just basically says you got to be transparent, you got to give real feedback, and you got to care a lot while doing it. What I like about that book is they even say, if you don't care a lot, just give the feedback. That's even better than caring and not saying what someone needs to hear. That's the worst place you can be, caring and not giving the feedback that the team members need, right? Sorry, Kev, I cut you off there.
No, if you don't care and you give the feedback, that maybe that's a lack of EQ. But realistically, though, you have to give feedback through a caring methodology, and I do think that it plays into this a lot. As we are moving forward, especially with AI coming into play, how do you see emotional intelligence evolving? How do you see it working into the plays with AI? You kind of hit on this a little bit earlier when you were talking about technology and how you do the additional segmenting and seeing where the customer flows. But as we move forward, AI is going to play more and more into this. And I think one of the biggest plays on the future is the human interaction is going to be important while AI is helping to drive a lot of the day-to-day work. How do you see it playing in? Where do you see emotional intelligence evolving from both a person to person and from an AI standpoint? And where does it play in the future of the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. AI is starting to find its place in customer success. We see a lot of focus on the language model side of it. I think what we'll start to see a lot more of, and I've been reading more of as well, is the agent side of it, where they essentially become a personal assistant to somebody in the work that they're doing. And that becomes very personalized. So I expect that in terms of, we'll start to see a real personalization of how this AI tools are used to the specific needs of a customer, which is good. I feel we still need that human aspect behind it. So we understand the customer and what their need might be. Training, using models, using data to provide them ideas, to be very data driven and specific can be really valuable, but still the human aspect of it can be really helpful. I'll give you an example of this. I worked with a large, well-known company, and they've been around well over 100 years. They leaned very much on it. That was always the messaging that they shared with their customers. This is our history, right? And so you want to be a part of it. What they found was they weren't connecting with younger potential buyers, because they didn't connect with your long-term history. Where do I fit into it? Part of that was using AI modeling to say, what story could we tell that put you inside our larger story? They added this as part of change management for how the material was shared, pitched, and discussed with potential clients and current clients, using this to personalize how this person and their set of scenarios would fit into the larger model of this history of this business. And they found a lot of connection with that. So there's an instance they saw with these younger clients and potential clients, the renewals and the upsells, et cetera. All that shows that when we personalize and somebody feels understood, recognized, we're matching the emotion they're feeling, it has a positive impact. So I still see the human part of it. The team, the people that I work with, the teams I work with, I encourage, use AI. Whatever the tool that you prefer, put it in there. If you have an idea, put it in there and say, well, what about this? And then here, make it friendly, or give me 3 other ideas to match this down the same path, right? See what that does, because it opens up your mindset to things that maybe you were lacking experience in, and now you can add that in and see what output you get from it.
Yeah. I feel that emotional intelligence will be way more valued in the future because of automation and AI. If you have a high EQ moving forward, that's going to transcend, especially because so much will be automated. If you have that human touch, that's going to be a very valuable resource for organizations.
If you were to do some research now, you find emotionally intelligent people progress further in their career, their income is higher, and they're more likely to be promoted. So much of that is about reading the room and recognizing the needs of the C-suite, recognizing how to play better cross-functionally. And everyone else recognizes it too, and they find success. You and I know how it is to talk to a chatbot. When you're trying to get something accomplished, you're like, I know I'm talking to a robot. Now, naturally, the agent model will see improvements. We're already seeing that, of course, but there is a difference. There is a difference. And so, agreed, that will absolutely be part of this as we grow. But from a customer-facing CS sort of self-awareness side of it, being mindful of how we're molding the two, we're meshing these two together to find that place and that sweet spot that customers get what they need, that we're giving data-driven insights, but also have that person to connect with who understands them, and we can discuss things on that the emotional level is going to be really impactful.
So on AI being able to interact more emotionally, actually was giving a presentation to a group of seniors yesterday. I did it with the advanced voice mode. I had the advanced voice mode partner with me in the discussion. The intelligence and emotional variations were really pretty good. We had practiced the speech. I was able to talk to it and say, hey, do you remember that we've been practicing the speech together? I'm so excited about giving, some of the questions that came from the group were interesting because they're like, will I know if I'm talking to an AI or a human? That's a good question. One of the things I think we'll have to start doing is you should be able to ask, and it should be legally required that the AI identify itself as an AI. One of the things that I think will start happening is people won't mind having conversations with the AI so much, but they're going to want a human involved. Rather than it being a conversation with just an AI, I think we're going to want to have a human and an AI on at the same time so that the conversation can be a 3-way conversation to help facilitate the best answers to the humans as we go forward. And this is just stuff I've been thinking about as we move forward, because the AI is going to get better at answering questions, but you're still going to want feedback from somebody who's sitting here thinking like you think as a human. So I think those are some things I'm starting to think about and see as we evolve over the next year, 5 years. Those are things we're going to have to start contemplating and how we address related to not just how we use AI, but really the emotional feeling and the emotional intelligence related to interacting with companies and with people. You want people involved.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's a commercial on it now of it's meant to be a friend in your pocket, and you're supposed to chat with them all the time and they're available. So that side is absolutely coming, and we'll just continue to see improvements. In preparation for today, we had a couple of key points to talk about. I put it through an AI tool, and I said, take this information and tweak it in about 30 seconds. I could have given a TED talk on the topic just by what it spewed out. That said, I needed to edit it. I need to go through and say, how do I want to order it? What are the key points I want to put in here? So there's that part of it that we need to focus. And the other part is data security too, that every company needs to focus on. At what point do we want an AI tool to say, you now have access to this? Whatever. Yes, I'll set up this API integration for you, and no other human being around is aware that it happened. There's that level of that discussion, and that's very company specific about how we want to do it. But yeah, I completely agree. This is not something that we want to downplay. I think there's a huge value in it, and we want to find how our place is alongside of it.
Yeah. Kevin, as you said that you had the AI in your pocket, remind me of that movie with Joaquin Phoenix. Have you seen Her? He's like he dates like this AI box. Anyway, I don't know why that popped out. But all right, exactly. I think we're ready for the hard hitting questions, Mr. Metzger. What do you think?
Let's move into the rapid fire.
Let's move into the rapid fire section. Guess, Kevin, you ready for this? You buckled up, ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right. Let's start here. You live up in the Philly area. Kevin and I take a road trip up to Philly. What do we need to see? Where do we need to eat?
Oh, boy. Well, the Rocky statue is a very popular one. Boathouse Row. I think those are some of the key areas to check out. In terms of what to eat, I know you're all thinking cheesesteak, which is
we are thinking. I was leaning cheesesteak,
but you can also get some fantastic Vietnamese and Thai food here as well if you're into that style as well. But I would Pat's and Gino's, the famous places. John's roast beef, I think, is probably the quintessential. So I would have to take you to South Philly for a good time.
Okay, dude, that's real quick. You're a Pat or Gino's guy. That's a real heated debate, right? Pat or Gino's, you got to.
I think I'm a Pats guy. It's been a number of years, but it's really good, like after a Phillies game, to go down there and hang out with everybody.
Nice.
Yeah, you Gino's listeners, make sure you reach out to Kevin McCahill. Said that. Not
Let
me
know.
So
Tell me what I missed.
What do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, I have 2 young kids, 8 and 6. I don't know how those middle ages. I don't know how little anybody thinks that age is anymore. They grow up so fast. Definitely spending a lot of time with them. And my wife, we like to travel as well. We were up in New York City last weekend. The kids love the Natural History Museum, so we got to check that out, which is really fun. Try to get them outside as much as possible and enjoy the seasons.
So we got Thanksgiving is this week. You got a favorite Thanksgiving side, Kevin?
In terms of a turkey dinner, mashed potatoes and gravy will always be my go-to for sure.
Yeah.
As long as there's football on, I'm here for the football. Yeah.
Exactly.
Are you much of a cook or no?
Oh yeah, I am. I like to quite a bit. We're actually doing this weekend more of a chili. We're having some friends over from a chili cook-off sort of stew thing, changing up a little bit this year, but that'll be really good. Yeah.
I'm a fan of chili. I make a mean chili.
Oh, nice.
Oh, we got a chili off here.
It's all about the
Kevin
spice.
versus Kevin chili off. That's what we need here. So, Kevin, where can our listeners find more about you, MasteryCX? Where can they check you out?
MasteryCX.com. My email is kevin@MasteryCX.com. Please come check us out. We're happy to share coaching, training, journey mapping, help companies post-sale build really strong systems and programs in place. That's what we do, and we'd love to help you as well.
Well, Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And have a great Thanksgiving as well. Audience, I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Kevin on emotional intelligence and how you can incorporate it into your customer success teams. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating, share it with your network. You can reach out and connect with Kevin and myself on LinkedIn. Kevin McCahill's on LinkedIn as well, so check him out on LinkedIn. But you can find me at Roman Trebon. You can find Kevin at Kevin Metzger. We have our Customer Success Playbook Podcast page on LinkedIn. Check that out. You'll see some clips of shows, upcoming guests, etc. We love hearing which topics and guests you'd like for us to have on the show. Our audience, have an amazing Thanksgiving. Enjoy this episode. Thanks for listening. And as always,
keep on playing.
Success is the goal, gonna stand tall. And instead of falling, pick up the game. Customer success is their claim to fame. On the podcast, they light the spark, elevating your skills, creating a mark. Let's dive deeper into the playbook. The secrets they share, no need to look. From onboarding to retention, they've got it all. Success